During the World Economic Forum on Africa 2014 in Abuja, key stakeholders in Africa's power sector came together to discuss private sector participation in Africa's power sector. Moderating a lively debate is the chairman, Technical Committee on the National Council of Privatization and the chairman of Stanbic IBTC Bank, Atedo Peterside.
On the stage with me from the extreme left, I have Honorable Bruno Kamfanji, who is the Minister of Energy from the DRC. To his immediate right is Dr. Patrick Komawa, who is from UNIDO. And on my immediate left is Michael Harvey from USAID, Nigeria. On my immediate right is Sim Shebalala, the group CEO of my bank group, Standard Bank. And on the far right is Ambassador Dr. Godnose Igali, the PAMSEC Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Power. I would like us to, yes, we're in Nigeria, but the focus is Africa as well. So we would like to broaden the whole discussion. And that's why on the panel we've got gentlemen who can help us to broaden the entire discussion. And I'm going to start off with UNIDO, so get ready in a minute. But I think there are one or two things that came out from the discussions from the two ministers. They both hinted at a paradigm shift in terms of power sector in Africa. That paradigm shift being how to bring in the private sector to play a major role. And also, there was a hint that the distribution companies sound like they could be the sort of Achilles heel. They are the last mile. They are the companies that deal with the end user, the consumer. So I would like to start off with the rep from UNIDO. Do you have any immediate reaction in terms of this paradigm shift and how to ensure that it succeeds and also spreads all over Africa in terms of involving the private sector, and how?
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, let me commend the Nigerian government for implementing a very robust and successful privatization process, one of the best in the recent years in Africa. The paradigm shift we are talking about, I think it's the way to go. Without the paradigm shift, that is moving from a hugely inefficient private sector led power sector supply, delivery, and distribution to where the private sector plays a major role. If you look at countries that have made it, and when we started in the minister's speech, he mentioned about the mains or the BRICS. But look at the OECD countries. Energy or power is the focus of rallying together as a group. So without privatization, Africa will not provide the necessary power they need to boost their economies. Africa will remain still as most of African countries will remain as developing countries. So for us to move from where we are today to make sure that our countries make available the necessary jobs they want to provide for the teeming population, power is the key. And without power, health sector also will not develop, because you need electricity in all the nooks and corners of your country to make sure that your vaccines are kept at the level that they should be. Education will not prosper. And most importantly, peace. Without power, peace will not be achieved in Africa. So that is why I think we need, as governments, as leaders in Africa, we need to ensure that the private sector, which is actually shown that when you privatize, you sort of bring in investors both from within your countries and from external sources to boost the availability of power. So that's the way to go.
I'm going to come across to you, Sim, because we spoke about the paradigm shift. Interestingly, I mean, your country, South Africa, which is now the second largest economy in Africa. the paradigm shift we're talking about in the power sector has not reached South Africa. I think you guys are lucky in the sense that your public sector did fairly well in terms of the power sector. So it looks as if everybody else is trying to involve the private sector in power. I mean, is there any such thing on the horizon in South Africa, or you're going to carry on with ESCOM?
So first of all, Atedo, I agree entirely with you. If you're not in Nigeria, you're not in Africa. And yes, South Africa is coming second to Nigeria by a long mile. So let's get that out of the way. But I think it is true to say that there is a lot that can be done in making sure that the legal and regulatory environment is properly structured, that the civil service is able to execute against that legal and regulatory environment, and that there are proper partnerships between investors, the private sector, utilities, and the government. A great example of precisely that in South Africa has been a recent program that has been executed by the authorities in South Africa, which is the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program, where we as Standard Bank, I'm proud to say, were able to dedicate $2.6 billion to that program. And that was really a great example of clear legislation, clear regulation, the government making sure that it's working in partnership with all the various stakeholders and then executing with precision. I might just add that another great example of collaboration here is the Power Africa initiative. And I hope I don't speak out of turn in the presence of USAID. That is a great opportunity to leverage the $7 billion that the US has dedicated, plus the $9 billion that is going to be leveraged, and then providing institutional capacity for the purposes of execution on the ground. So the paradigm shift, I think, is more partnerships. I wouldn't argue that it's either the private sector or the public sector. There are hybrids, I think, that one could execute.
Okay. Honorable Bruno Kafanji, the DRC. I mean, are there any lessons you're in terms of the power sector reforms that you're learning from Nigeria, Ghana, or what plans do you have in the DRC in terms of bringing in the private sector into power?
Thank you very much. Last time when I was here, Nigeria gave me a beautiful woman who was a translator for me, because nowadays I don't see her. My English is not good, but I try if you can understand. I am very old to learn.
You're doing very well so far.
Thank you. Really, in DRC, you know that we have 52% is the potential hydro in Africa. 52% is in DRC. And in hydro, we have 100,000 megawatt and 4,500 megawatt is based at Inga site. I think that it is the big project, but it's not a Congress project. It is Africa's project. That is why my message is to ask all African people, all partners, each partners, come with us to build Inga. Where we are now, the African Development Bank financed this feasibility study. Now we have the feasibility study, and we have the conclusion of this feasibility to begin to build Grand Inga with the first phase. The first phase is Inga 3. We will produce 4,800 megawatt. But we have signed a treaty with the South Africa government. South Africa government will buy 2,500
megawatts.
Yes, megawatt. And the rest is for the needs local.
For local, yeah.
Exactly, thank you. But in the reform, we are coming before Nigeria. Now we have a law who liberalize the sector.
Okay.
Okay. Each businessman can come to DRC, invest in production, translate, and distribute the electricity in DRC. And this law is voted by the parliament. Now we are waiting for the sign of the President Kabila. For Inga, that is the message from the President Kabila. He tell me to tell you that Inga project is an African project and integration project. It is for all Africa.
I understand.
The first line is between Inga and South Africa, but the second line we are waiting for Inga Calabar. They are not people from Calabar here. You must arrange a place to build the post in French. And we are waiting for you. Now we have African Development Bank, World Bank. We are waiting for USAID, but the other partners, countries, government or private sector to come with us to build Inga. We have not another vice if we want to develop our country. Inga is the first project, and for us, we must build the Inga, and we need to have the first megawatt and 2020. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that is our challenge, and I can tell you that we are waiting for you to come.
Okay.
If you don't come, the others are coming.
Yes. You know, when he explained, that last time they gave him a translator, it's because we knew that his English is now much better. And it's definitely much better than my French. And I think he has made a very important point, which is to point out that, if you look at Africa's map and you talk about hydro potential, I think what he has communicated is that DRC with River Congo has a huge potential in terms of hydro power beyond what their own country needs, and they can even export to South Africa and other countries. So I'm coming next to USAID, Michael Harvey. After this nice commentary from the DRC, is there anything that USAID can, do you intend to help the DRC in any way? And then you can also zero in on what you're doing in Nigeria in terms of this paradigm shift.
Well, let me just say, on terms of the paradigm shift, there's actually two that we have seen. One, this understanding of shifting from the private sector from the public sector, but also there has been a paradigm shift in the leadership that has been coming from Africans on this issue. And that is what has been very impressive, and that is what the U.S. government under Power Africa is coming up to stand alongside of. So this is being African-led, it's being an African vision, and as our bankers will tell you, this has been also African finance to a very, very significant degree. And that is what is impressive. Africa is rising on its own feet with the help of its friends, but it's doing it. Now, I will be careful on what I say about Inga, but I will say that the United States sees Inga as a very important project. I can happily say I don't have the authority to speak on what we're planning, but it's something that we believe, as you do, that it very much is an African project that has the capacity to not only benefit South Africa, but eventually the broader Central and West Africa market. So it's a very, very important project, which we do hope will we'll be pouring concrete and seeing power coming out. In Nigeria, like the rest of the world, like the rest of Africa, what USAID has tried to do is sort of stand in the back and support and enable. And I appreciated the minister's comments on the support we've given on the bulk trader. But we've been trying to stay engaged on every piece of the privatization here in Nigeria, including working through some of the financing issues. And we will continue to do that. Power Africa is at the center of what USAID is doing in Nigeria and what we are doing in Africa. So we're very proud of the role we've been able to have in making this happen. But I think it's particularly more important for the people of Africa to understand that this is their leadership that has been driving this. It is their vision that's making it move forward. And we're looking forward to that vision being carried by the presidents of Africa when they come to Washington in August. I think this is going to be a very, very exciting centerpiece of the Summit of African Leaders in Washington. So thank you very much.
Ambassador, thank you. Ambassador, I was always going to come to you last because you're the chief host and we're in your domain. In terms of the experience so far of bringing the private sector more actively into our power sector, can you just give us your initial sort of insights? I mean, are you excited by what you've seen so far? Was there anything unexpected? Are we disappointed? Ignore the fact that in this room there are some people who are investors in the discourse and so on. Just tell us from your initial observations, this whole paradigm shift. Any regrets?
Not at all. On the contrary, we have every reason to celebrate the success of this process. And I'm happy that some of the architects of the process, Professor Barton Naji, and others are here in this hall. We had no other route to go. We had a sector that was terribly bedeviled by insolvency, inefficiencies. Nigerians had more hours of darkness than light. And for all these years, from about 1860, when the first power plants arrived in Lagos, till we privatized, government was in total ownership. And there were high technical and commercial losses. Government had to subsidize. I as permanent secretary of Ministry of Power, I came in and we were paying about 10 billion naira every month as salaries for about 46,000 workers, besides other huge expenses. Yet Nigeria did not have light. So first is the courage, the political courage demonstrated by our leaders. Former President Obasanjo, who started the process, coming to President Yar'Adua's period. Then, well, President Yar'Adua's period, there was a lot of National Assembly oversight functions and the performance of their duties. Things were a bit in a lull. Then on 10th of, in October 2010, President Jonathan came up with this robust roadmap, and Professor Naji was there with him at the time. What is good news is that today, everything that we set out to do has been achieved. And President made it clear that, yes, it was a no-go area, but that we must go into it. The creativity, the dexterity, and the ability of the private sector to bring in new managerial skills and internationalization of the sector had to take place. I operate under an envelope. I'm told this is how much you can spend, but that does not happen with the private sector. They see a business opportunity, a good transaction, and they go for it. So we have nothing to regret. Today we see all the new IPPs coming up as we try to solve the gas issue. Today we see, even at the disco level, which is right now slightly like an orphan, because people are not investing in discos, but we see a lot of the new owners of the discos going into deals to improve and modernize. So looking back, we're happy. The demonstration of political commitment, and I think that is where other African countries can learn from. There was a high level of political commitment. Two, USAID working with us, other development partners, World Bank, JICA, which also has embedded staff in the ministry. There was a process of transparency. And I'm happy, moderator, you find yourself in a difficult situation because you were in charge of the technical level. Government brought in the private sector, the development partners, and government officials working together. You chaired all the technical meetings of the privatization, which has been adjudged the most transparent divestment process in Africa.
Okay, so on that note, I have to ask you the question which I'm asked every single day in Lagos. They say we keep on seeing all these ministers, PAMSEC, myself, all these people on stage every day, USAID, saying the wonderful transaction. Why are we still in the dark? When will we see light in our houses?
Well, what
Please answer that question. By what date can you see an improvement?
That's a
every day
big
they ask you
question.
that question.
Thank you very much. The answer is simple. What had happened was that we had a network that had not been maintained properly. Inefficiencies were very at highest level. The transmission network was very poor. Distribution network, substations, interconnectivity, interface issues were very poor. Now the private sector has taken over. We've sat down with the private owners and looked at their capex plans, what they intend to do in terms of investment. They're very good. Look at the case of Ugeli. We are operating at about 30% of what is installed. Now the new owners have signed deals with GE and with other partners in the next 1 year or next 24 months to 18 months to raise the capacity to about 1,000 megawatts from about 200 megawatts where they are. Look at Kainji. Kainji has never operated at optimal level, 8 turbines optimal, but we've operated about 4 turbines. The new owners of Kainji, the concessionaries, have already signed agreements to make sure that at any time, minimum of about 7 turbines are working. So Nigerians, the answer is that yes, we've just handed over and the private sector is doing everything to bring in value, to modernize, to upgrade, and to ensure that power supply is stable. Now, at this point, there will be some changes, interface, some little period of being able to settle down. Number 2, we had unprecedented level of vandalization. It's difficult to explain, but there was some vandalization of our major gas assets, and that affected how much power was available to the market. So when will the sector stabilize in the next few months?
I will be kind to you. I won't do to you what they do to me in Lagos, which is that they look me in the face and say, Mr. Peter said, your answer is too long. Just give me a date.
The rest of the discussion continues after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back as we continue with private sector participation in achieving access to power, moderated by the Chairman Technical Committee on the National Council of Privatization and the Chairman of Stanbic IBTC Bank, Atedo Peterside.
In terms of this paradigm shift, are there any particular things that you think are missing, or are there any things we should look out for, or in terms of, is there any further innovation that is required? I'm asking anybody, U.S. in particular, yes?
Well, if I could jump in, there's two things that worry me, and there's one real challenge, I think, for us. I'm a little worried about the investment in the transmission system, and I'm a little worried about getting the legal and political constraints resolved on gas supply. I think those are two big challenges that remain for the political leadership to deal with. The other challenge to the sector is how do we get power to people off the grid?
Off grid.
And most Nigerians will be off the grid for
a long time.
A long time. And that's just a fact we have to live with. And I was particularly touched by the passion that the minister expressed about solar energy. We agree. There's a huge, it's not just about cost, it's also about having people who have the technical skills to maintain the hardware. But it's an exciting thought that we could have literally every village in all of sunny Africa, I don't know about Zaire, Democratic Republic of Congo with all the cloud, but powered by solar. I mean, that's a vision that's worth getting excited about.
hear the comment.
Yeah, and let me just add to what my colleague here has said. If we have a country where more than 30% of the population do not have access to electricity, particularly those residing in rural areas, I think that is a big message. It's a big message for the investors themselves, because focusing only on the large sector, I think we are missing another big investment pool. Investment in solar, investment in mini hydro, investment in use of biomass to power, and all of these exist here in Nigeria. So I think that is one area that at least is missing at the time, but provides huge investment. Second aspect is it's not a problem, but just the experience here in Nigeria that we would like to share with other partners in the room. How the development partners accompany the government to achieve the privatization. I think that is very commendable. Agencies like the USAID is here on the panel, JICA, the World Bank, the French Development Corporation, of course the organization I represent here in Nigeria, UNIDO, DFID, of course DFID. All of these have contributed immensely to the privatization process. They didn't only provide policy advice, but they also brought into bear good practices from their various countries, and also helped with financial support, bringing their banks, the banks from the various countries, to support the privatization. And when we did a count, the last meeting we have, the investment, the development partners will be bringing or are bringing up to the year 2018, we amount to about $2 billion. That is a huge amount of commitment. So that experience is important for other countries, that there is also that pool, that group of people that needs to be brought into bear when you do the privatization process.
Yes, Sim.
I think just picking up on the point, what is really staggering about what was achieved in Nigeria is that the funding came exclusively from the banking sector in Nigeria, and Nigerian banks, I think, need to stand proud for that great achievement. But I do think in this paradigm shift, there's some work that needs to be done in thinking about the relationship as Nigeria implements Basel, for example, the relationship between people who can provide debt and people who have to provide equity. That's a conversation, I think, between development agencies, government, and the private sector. So that's the one point. The second point, which I think is for politicians to address, and that is, having implemented, I do think that there are going to be issues about the ability of the projects to sustain the cost base, both the cost and the financing cost, and therefore that raises issues about tariffs. And I think the minister from Ghana did allude to this. This is a matter to be addressed, and it is a challenge, and I think the Nigerian sector is facing that very issue.
I think that I would like to make a comment here. You know, we've mentioned all these agencies, and believe me, I worked with some of them, and they were very, very, very helpful. But it's an important lesson that I think must not be missed, which is that at the end of the day, they are external agencies. And I'll give you just one example where a number of them, for obvious reasons, the officers there at various stages called me and said, look, don't you think this program is too ambitious? Why don't you first privatize one or two discos, learn some lessons, fine-tune? The decision as to when or how to take on the big challenge is a national one. And I definitely never wavered for 1 second and made sure that I put pressure on those in government, because there was a very simple reason for me. I know my countrymen. If you privatize one disco or two discos, the political backlash from privatizing one or two is the same as privatizing all at the same time. Yeah. So go for the thing once and for all and face the backlash. You know. So now I'm just going to show you how you can marry foreign expertise with local knowledge. In this room too, we have some politicians. They know the political challenges involved in one disco are the same as 11. So you have to marry the two, as opposed to thinking, and I'm saying this for the benefit of other African countries. The foreign experts are useful, but you understand your local challenges, your local politicians, and choose a path that ensures that you can move forward. You know, so PAMSEC, yes. I'm still going to to come back to you, there have been concerns about whether the discos are going to bring in enough money at all to make the system viable. Everybody keeps on asking me, and even the disco owners.
Yes. The post-privatization challenges and solutions are all integrated. I'm happy that the issue of gas has been mentioned. It's important to deal with the issue of fuel source, and it is being tackled with all seriousness, both for the legacy plants, which have now gone to new owners, and the new owners are almost wanting to expand and upgrade as at yesterday. So we have to ensure that there's gas available to them. And also the NIPP plants, which are new greenfield plants. We are looking at the issue of gas from different perspectives, working together with those in the oil and gas sector. We may not always depend on the mega projects of piping, and we see there are gas fields which can give 30 megawatts, 40 megawatts, and smaller capacity. We are looking at them. And so we think that with the focus that has been placed on gas, we'll be able to deal with the issue of fuel source. You see, it's connected with the issue of tariffs, it's connected with the issue of the getting to a comfortable cruising level, because if you generate enough power, then the discos will have more energy coming to them, and the customers will be able to, even if you increase tariffs, customers will be ready to pay if they see that power supply is steady. So it's linked, and that's why we're looking at it in a composite manner to ensure. Now, one other point I must mention is with the discos. Some of the discos are now trying to see how they can get embedded power, solar and other sources. Embedded power within the disco areas, which is very good. These are not things that are coming under government. I think as Nigerian consumers have more power available, the discos will be in a better position to attract more resources coming to them.
Yes, in fact, I was going to mention something else there. When your minister was talking and he described these solar projects for rural communities, it almost sounded as if it was an exclusively government project.
No.
Yes, I mean, how can you involve the private sector in this solar power for the off-grid?
Already we're involved with the private sector. The one we did in Durumi was with Schneider Electric and Philips Electric, Schneider of France and Philips of Netherlands. There are other ones we're doing that Nigerian companies are also involved. Government's effort right now is a pilot stage. The idea is for us in bigger communities to involve the regulator and for them to be able to, and the discos, to get involved in a way that this embedded power can be available. So it's going to be private sector driven. We have already shown it in Durumi that government and the private sector can work together. Only that at this stage, it was 2 international companies that volunteered. But we're now reaching out to many Nigerian companies and they're signing on. And legal framework is being worked in partnership with National Assembly.
And USAID, since you said you were so excited about this solar and the off-grid, I mean, do you want to join me to use my village as a pilot?
Just give me the coordinates.
I'll give you the coordinates. I mean, and in fact, talking seriously, I mean, how can you support? He said there's a role for private investors in this off-grid solar solution.
Well, on a couple of ways. One, we'll continue to help deal with the legal and regulatory issues and the independent power purchase agreements and all that. And there's a lot to be done in there. But the other thing that we're trying to do is to challenge the private sector to come with sort of bankable and interesting new ideas on how do you do this. We actually launched yesterday a new challenge through the African Development Fund that we'll be helping to co-fund. But we're also generally sort of putting the word out. If people have interesting ideas, come to us and let us see what we can do to try to put a deal together, working with Nigerian partners, but also with American partners and American institutions.
Sorry, moderator, can I just quickly say, with respect to Power Africa, one view we have is that the focus, we thank President Obama for $7 billion, and but we think that the focus should not only be on the big, huge mega projects. We are just talking about small, embedded situations that can increase the access to power. And we think that there are American companies that may not be the biggest, I don't want to call any name, but at the same time, they have their Nigerian and other African partners who can interface at a level that will not take all the 7 billion. So for more access to power, I think we should be looking at second-tier, third-tier companies that can reach out and be part of this renewable energy efforts around the continent.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, the recent figures I saw, the likes of GE and Siemens even seem to be invading the solar sector and knocking out the smaller players. Am I right?
Well, I will like just to add to the issue of looking at the aggregated sector for renewable energy. What I think we need to do very quickly is actually focusing on those smaller scale hydropower plants, because the investment required for the large plants, these have been made. They need to be retuned, they need to improve efficiency. But for us to turn around the economy, I mean, looking at the topic here, power for economic advancement, you have most of your people living in rural areas. And as I mentioned earlier, we have water bodies. Our organization, together with the Federal Ministry of Power, have mapped out more than 200 sites in this country where mini hydro can have a huge potential. So imagine investing in those areas. Within the next 1 to 2 years, you've already be able to transform those regions. This is, I think, one very short way we can address the issue of power. Second, looking at the regionalization, I think that was mentioned in the minister's speech.
And let me just pause you a second, because we actually have to do now a final wrap-up, and I'll come to you last.
Okay.
So that I'm required to go through each of the panelists for a final word to the audience, like a 1 minute. Any final thoughts or comments you have? I start with you this time.
Well, the issue of INGA was mentioned, and I think we need to make clear that in principle, we from Nigeria are supportive of the INGA project. We were there last year, we're there this year. We're engaging at bilateral levels. There were some advanced press reports that were surprising to us. South Africa is further from Congo than Nigeria. We're closer to Congo. South Africa is already taking a big chunk of what is available. All over the world, power is now being sold across. We will try and do every policy, every effort to develop all the energy potentials of Nigeria, but it will not still be enough for all our needs. And if the economics work out and bring in power from 40,000 megawatts transmission, whether submarine or terrestrial, whatever way to Nigeria is cheaper, there's nothing bad about it.
Sure.
So we're discussing with Congo, and by the end of the day is to get enough power to Nigeria.
Kasim, final comment from you.
In the case of South Africa, the rate of growth of that economy is capped at about 3% by lack of power, by power. In the case of Nigeria, the demographic dividend that can be delivered in Nigeria could give rise to a tripling of the Nigerian economy in a couple of decades. And that requires institutional deepening, execution, and delivery of projects such as the ones we've been discussing today. And so it's an exciting time to be working on the African continent, and I think we should seize these opportunities. And I must commend all our colleagues for even having this conversation. Thank you.
Michael, final word.
We haven't mentioned the fact that many of the African finance and power ministers are meeting this afternoon here on the margins of the WEF to specifically talk about the African vision for power. And I think it's very fitting that it's here in Nigeria and that Nigeria is taking the lead, because you guys have really sort of blazed such a trail. And what we're hoping is that out of this conversation and the broader conversation that it is part of, we will really gel a very crisp, clear Nigerian vision for power in the 21st century.
Thank you. Patrick, a final word now from you.
Thank you. Regionalization, I think it's very important. You need large markets for some investors to invest in the power sector. So making sure that what we do in Nigeria spill over to Ghana, spill over to Benin Republic, so that when one invests in Nigeria, they can sell out their power to another country. or when somebody invests in Ghana, they can sell to Nigeria. Second point, energy mix. Please ensure that we focus not only on one source of energy, but looking at renewables and, of course, and other sources of power.
Okay, I mean, what I'm going to say in my final word is that when I heard the Minister of Power talking, and please give him the message, Pamsek, he kept on saying that this is the side event of the World Economic Forum and so on. Please tell him that power is the main event. and that we didn't come here for side events. At the end of the day, what we're discussing here is the most important thing that can transform lives in Nigeria and Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you agree that this is the main event? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but having said that, I think it's also fair to say that, of course, we know, and I'm happy the gentleman from DRC had to leave. He had to leave, but I'm happy he made this comment because he broadened the discussion by making us realize that DRC potentially can export huge amounts of power. Because they are blessed with River Congo, the hydro potential is phenomenal. So that's why we hear already that South Africa is trying to take power from them. And there's no reason why Nigeria and other countries also should not think about the same. Every country in Africa does not have this, is not blessed with the same resources. Yeah. And we should be thinking in terms of the whole region, how to maximize. And we hope that if the cost makes sense, we should be doing transmission lines and bringing power from wherever it's available and abundant. You know, and also, I mean, I want to apologize to those in the audience who initially saw the program and thought they could ask questions and so on. I mean, the program was changed on account of time constraints. But I think also that because we are this world, this forum, and Africa is the focus as well, I think it's important that we all brainstorm, use this opportunity, you know, talk to our colleagues. I wish there were more people here from elsewhere in Africa, but there are many of them at the Hilton and so on, because that interaction, I'm always amazed that the more you talk to human beings, the more ideas come into your head. You know, and so that's the process that I think I would like us to encourage. And that's why I'm happy that the Ministry of Power agreed to have us here today. And this hall is quite full in spite of all the concerns about movement of persons. That just shows you the interest level that the power sector commands in Nigeria and in Africa. And also it's interesting that all of a sudden you start hearing about the US and US president, you know, talking about power in Africa. It shows you that everybody has taken notice. And my own usual comment is to point out that in Nigeria, at least, the center of gravity in the power sector has shifted. It has shifted already to the private sector. That's already history. Whether or not it succeeds immediately is neither here nor there. The bottom line is that as of today, the whole of distribution is already privatized, and much of generation, and even transmission has a management contractor. And I think more and more African countries will be going down that same line or that same route, and including the second biggest economy in Africa, eventually.
That was a discussion on private sector participation in achieving access to power, jointly hosted by the Federal Ministry of Power, Standard Bank Group, and Stanbic IBTC. I'm Onyi Sunday. Thanks for watching.